Today we're going to be doing a lesson on math using 10 frames. And we're going to be using 10 frames for algebraic equations up to 20. So if you haven't used 10 frames before, what they are, they look something similar to this. And then what they have is two-sided pieces that are different colors, in this case red and blue, that fit right into your little frame here. So you have 10 pieces in here frame. Now I've seen individuals or teachers use them vertically, and I've also seen them used horizontally. But the biggest thing you want to emphasize whenever you're using 10 frames is that you always want to fill up one complete row or one complete column, depending on how you are arranging your 10 frames. The nice thing about these 10 frames too is that they're almost like puzzle pieces that you can assemble together. So you can have 10, 20, 30, 40, however many you want. They can come as magnetic pieces that you can put up on a whiteboard, or they can be used handheld models too that you can use right with your students. If your students need to work at home or work as an extension activity, if you don't have 10 frames that you want to lend out, what they can do is use something similar to this. It's just a little disc, two-sided colors. You can use cardboard to cut that out and color it two different colors. Those are readily accessible. And then all I would do is then take that, a piece of paper and create your own little 10 frame at home. So again, it's very easy to be able to use and make sure they're in columns or rows of 5, and then you build 10 at a time. So let's jump into the lesson using algebraic equations. So the first thing you want to do with students is getting familiarized with 10 frames, okay? So traditionally I would use about 6 different individual pieces like this. And then at that point I would say, okay, how many total do you see there that are colored blue? Or how many of these little pieces that you see? In this case it'd be 6. I said, okay, great. Now I would change it up where I would flip 3 of those a different color. And at that point you would say, okay, how many are blue still, and how many are now red? How many total do I have? I still have 6, but now I have 3 blue and 3 red. So they kind of see the difference between the two different numbers. And the reason being is because when we start doing algebraic equations, we want them to start to see the total number, but also the difference between the two different colors, the totals of those, because then we're going to start building fact families. All right, so in this lesson, what it comes with, after you do the introduction here, you're going to actually start doing the different activities. And each of the activities come with worksheets. So activity 1 would come with 10 frames worksheet number 1 here. And what I would do with the students and how you do the lesson is you would start going over the first 2 problems with them. And then the third problem is the one you'd get them to practice and work independently. And then you'd be able to check in with them based on how well they did. So let's walk through that and what that would actually look like. Okay, so if you want to look down here at the supplies that I have here, I have multiple different 10 frames. I have my different pieces, discs here too as well, in case you're interested to see how I might be able to do that on paper. But let's look at the first problem that we have on our worksheet. So we have blank plus 9 equals 15. So the first thing we're going to need to do is look at the total number and then make sure we have enough pieces or holes for our equation. So in this case we have 15, so we're going to need to put together 2 10 frames together. And then what we can do then, I'm going to put them vertically so it's going to be a little bit easier for you to see. All right, so then we need a total of 15, and then we have 9 that are one color and a blank that are the other color. So in this case we have 5, 10, and then I'll switch this over to make it easier. And we almost want to work backwards in a lot of these equations, and the students might point this out as well. Typically when you're doing these problems, you would work with the front numbers, but we're actually doing a little bit backwards. We want to do the total first to make sure we have all the pieces that we need. All right, so we have 5, 10, 15. 9 of them are a certain color, so we can pick either blue or keep it original. If it was red, we can keep it red. So 5, 9 are blue. and then we have an unknown number that equals 15. So we're going to take the remainder of those, that is an unknown, and we're going to switch that over to a different color. So at this point, we want to make sure to reiterate the fact that we have 15 total. We have 9 of a certain color, whether it's red or blue, and then we have an unknown, which is the opposite color. And at this point, this makes it a little bit easier for students to visualize for them, so they can see that clearly that there are 6 total red. So at this point, we would say, okay, we have 6 plus 9 equals 15. All right, so when we get into our fact families, we can say, okay, our very first fact family is actually 6 plus 9 equals 15. All right, now we also notice that there's another plus here, okay? So if we were to change these numbers around, we can see clearly that this would also equal 15, and we can demonstrate that on the 10 frames, but this is an easy equation for them to kind of figure out. And I would work with the students too, so oftentimes I would say, okay, if we put the 15 here and we put the 9 or 6, do we have enough of the 10 frames to make that equation? And they'll say, well, no, because we're always using these 3 numbers and they can't deviate from the fact family. So after we get the plus or the addition problems, then we're going to work with the subtraction problems. And the key focus that you want to do is you want to make sure that students always work with the largest number first. And we want to reiterate that to them so that they always know that our 15 is always going to be our very first number in the fact family. Now at this point now we have 2 remainder numbers, whether it was 6 or 9. And so we can work these problems out in the 10 frames. Some students are intuitive and they might be able to figure this out already, and that's okay too. They kind of realize that if I put a 9 here, that the remainder is 6, and we can visualize that on here as well. So if we wanted to have this used on the 10 frames, so we'd have our 15, and we have actually we could probably leave it like this if we wanted to. So if we had a total of 15 and we took away the 6, how much do we have left? So it's a great easy way to demonstrate using these hands manipulatives, and then we can figure out the remainder of these different fact families. So again, this is problem number 1. I work with them a little bit slower on this than I would with you, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how you'd be able to use this. The next one, problem 2 on the activity 1, uses the same kind of methodology where we're using the total numbers, where we're working backwards. We want to reiterate we're using 16 this time. So if we had 16, we added our next one there, but now 7 of them is a certain color. So whether it's blue or red, we'd make sure that 7 of those are ready to go, and then we would switch it out. And we allow the students to be able to count up, to be able to know that, okay, 9 is left over. So 9 plus 16, or 9 plus 7 is 16. Again, working through the fact families, we know that 16 has to be our equal number because that's the total that we're working with. And then we can work with the students individually if need be, or have them practice to see if they can do it by themselves. Typically I would do the first 2 problems with the students, and then I would easily be able to make sure to work with them to show that, okay, if you have 9 there, again, that's similar to our very first problem, but if we put 7 there, does that really change? If so, why? And kind of stop there for understanding of the students, of the knowledge, and then we have our 2 fact families. So again, after we get to the subtraction problem, we're going to work with our biggest number first. It's always important, key that we're going to take away from the largest number. And then we're going to fill in our last 2 numbers there, which would be, of course, 7 and 9, 9 and 7. Okay, so that's the very first worksheet that we're going to be working with, the 10 frames. And then from there, if they need more practice, what's really nice is they have an intervention sheet that are included in all the different lessons. So activity 1 is going to work through all 5 of the different problems. And then if they need a little bit more work, they have an intervention sheet to work with the same sort of type of those digits up to about 20. Now, the nice thing is too, they actually have an extension worksheet. So now if you want to extend past 20 to challenge some of those other students, you certainly can do that as well. That's also included within the lesson. So again, there's the first activity sheet. You practice, you do the problems 1 and 2 together. You do a practice independently, working on 3. You kind of check for understanding on the 10 frames. So do you know, why did you put down on that second one or that third worksheet the equation? For example, equation is blank plus 8 equals 12. So you know there's a total of 12. Why do you know that there's supposed to be 12 dots in the 10 frames? Why is 8 of them one color? Why is 4 a different color? It's a great way to kind of check in to see why they're using the 10 frames and how that associates with the numbers and the fact families that they're doing. So again, that's problems 1 and 2 for activity 1. You do the check, and then the second part of that, activity 2, which could be done on the same day or it could be done on a separate day. There's word problems. So the word problems actually use the 10 frames almost very similar to the way you had it. So again, you have a first worksheet here. You read the problem. Henry needs 14 cups for his birthday party next week. So we know the large number is going to be 14. And then we know that Henry has 6 cups. So we know that Henry has 6 cups. How many more cups does Henry need for the party? So typically I would read the whole equation first and then kind of let them think about it. Eventually the students are going to know that they're going to need 2 10 frames again. In this case they need 14. So you know 5, 10, 15. Okay, so we need to minus 1 or take away 1. We know that 6 of them is going to be a certain color. And so we know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then it's going to ask how many more cups are needed for Henry's party. So in this case, very similar to the very first problem that we worked on, students are going to be able to see visually. You look at the whole number. One color is going to be the first part of the equation. The other color is going to be the unknown, whether it's red or blue. And then they're going to be able to solve the problems. Again, and then they can write their answers on. And then from there, you have the intervention worksheet. This, again, works with worksheet number 1. You're going to do problems 1 and 2 together, have them work independent 3. You can do the intervention if they start to still have problems with the word problems. Literacy is a little bit harder because you sometimes have to interpret what you're actually reading. So it's reading and math, not just math or literacy. And then if you need problems to work beyond just 20, they also have an extension sheet as well. So that's the actual lesson itself. It's a 1 and 2 day. You start with the 10 frames, easy addition, a subtraction with the fact families, and then you work on to literacy and word problems. Now there are some certain extensions to this as well. If you want to go beyond 20, you can do 30, 40, 50, etc. 10 frames is pretty universal in that sense. But if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me at jnelson@nascoeducation.com. You can reach out to our social handles as well. We always love to hear from our educators to see what they're doing and how they're coming along with certain projects. If you have any other questions, I'm definitely available. But thank you for listening.